Hey everybody, welcome back to Swedenborgian Life. Today we're going to be talking about how to love your enemies. So if you want to pick that knowledge up, you're in the right spot. Our topics today are going to be, should we act the same toward everyone? What's the difference between revenge and loving corrective action? And third, the fundamental of goodwill. So in a number of spiritual traditions, we get this call in some form to love our enemies. People talk a lot about universal or unconditional love, but what does that mean? If somebody's trying to steal my wallet, do I give it to them out of love? But what if I had kids that were dependent on that money? A lot of people believe that other people are acting in a way that is harming the human race. Do we stop trying to get them to act differently and just love them instead? Or on the other side, some people believe in tough love. If somebody's doing something out of order, we have a right to do something. But then what's the difference between that and your run-of-the-mill, ego-based revenge? Universal love, a love that extends not just to those we like or those close to us, but even those we disagree with or are outright enemies, sounds like a cool thing. It sounds transcendent, like something to aspire to. But how do you do it? What does universal love look like in a world full of harmful actions? Stay tuned. All right, so we're back, and we're going to be talking, as I said before, about how to love your enemies, or we'll do our best to talk about it. My name is Curtis, and I'm with the Swedenborg Foundation, and our guests today are Chuck Blair and Peter Rhodes. Welcome back, you guys. Chuck is a senior pastor at New Church Live, and Peter Rhodes is author of several books, including the wonderful Observing Spirit. So thank you guys both for being back on the show.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so let's get right into the topic. Our first segment is going to be should we act the same toward everyone? And I wanted to first talk just about on the external level about actions. You know, what does it mean? What does love mean in these different contexts? Because obviously in society we treat people in all different kinds of ways. Some people we are friendly and we give them money. Some people we put them in prison. Which actions are loving, which are not loving? So here's a little quote from Swedenborg to get us rolling. Loving our neighbor is intending and doing good not only to neighbors, friends, and good people, but also to strangers, enemies, and evil people. But we exercise goodwill in our dealings with the latter in different ways than we do in dealings with the former. We exercise goodwill in our dealings with our neighbors and friends by benefiting them directly. We exercise goodwill in our dealings with our enemies and evil people by benefiting them indirectly through our warnings, corrective actions, punishment, and therefore efforts to improve them. So, Peter, it seems like he's, and you've come across this in life, you know, that the right course of action or the most loving course of action isn't always the same based on situation.
Yeah, I would say the affections you have are going to manifest in your behavior. Behaviors are just forms of affection acted outward. If I'm coming from love of myself or ego-based love or self-centered love, I love those people who are good to me, and I can't love enemies. People who disagree with me, they may even just vote contrary to the way I vote. I mean, something as simple as that.
In the worst case.
In the worst case, yeah. So my love of myself is incapable of that, but I believe we're built in such a way that God's love can start to enter us. That's the Christmas story, really, when God comes down into the human. And that love can love enemies and love good people because it is love. But that love itself is also wise, so it's not going to be an enabler. I was a probation officer for years, and I didn't have to hate someone in order to take them off the streets because they're using cocaine and they're a school bus driver. So I'm actually working on their behalf. If I take them off the street and put them into a rehab, that is loving them. If I ignore it and give them money or give them drugs, they may think that's loving, but it's not loving because it's supporting part of them that they're addicted to and powerless over and is disorderly in their life, makes their life unmanageable. So I'm going to act differently to people depending on their behavior, but I don't have to feel differently in regard to the person. I can still love that person at the same time I'm doing something that the disorder in them is not very pleased with.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, what short term doesn't really feel like love. Oh, you're not giving me what I want. Can be love, and love to them, and love to the rest of society. And Chuck, you had a story that you were telling me when we first started talking about this topic, about somebody who you remember what I'm talking about, with the guy who was pulled over driving drunk, and the impact that had. You want to relay that real quick?
Yeah, we had a person talk to a group of teenagers that I was working with. And he was talking about it, his addiction, how his addiction finally really came to rule his life. And there was a moment where it was sort of all bets were off. And what he said was he was driving one night and he was inebriated. He got pulled over by a police officer. And this was before all the drunk driving regulations that we have today. This police officer obviously knew that this guy was hammered. And the police officer just came up to him, knew it, said, look, just drive home, sleep it off. And he felt at that moment that all bets were off. And it's a great example of how when we feel like we're serving somebody by allowing a behavior that's destructive for them in the long run to continue, that really we're not serving them very well. I mean, I think about how so much of that can be our discomfort in having the conversation, can actually be selfish in a certain sense, because I don't want to feel uncomfortable saying that. Yeah. Well, that's all about me. That's not really about them.
Right, because you want to avoid the pain of the awkwardness or the confrontation or something. And so it's sort of another aspect of it. So there's this enabling sort of thing, and then there's also, if I'm trying to live a loving life, and somebody comes up and starts pushing somebody else around, I can still go stop that person. And it's not like doesn't have to be total pacifism, because there's times when you have to protect a person and protect the person pushing that person around from the evil that's kind of flowing through them. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, Swedenborg talks about you're protecting what's good. And what's good may be the physical safety of that person who's being threatened. And so you have to intervene, and you may physically have to restrain that person or fight with that person, or maybe even have to shoot that person. But you're not against the person, you're protecting the good. And if the good needs to be protected by, intervening physically with this person, then you're protecting the good. The difference in the feel is revenge is against somebody.
Yep.
And I can feel that in myself, and I watch TV programs, and the revenge, Swedenborg says that's one of our highest delights. And I do like revenge.
But only when people deserve it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Actually, this is a perfect segue into our next segment. So let's get that started, and then we can continue that thought. Part 2, what's the difference between revenge and loving corrective action? Because I think people will try to pass one off as the other. Like I'm just doing what's best. I can just say, I'm just doing what's best for you. When it's just revenge. So let's take a little look at a Swedenborg quote here. And this is just what you're talking about, Pete. For another example, suppose someone strikes under the attack of an enemy, repels the attacker, and either strikes in self-defense or turns the attacker over to a judge to avoid being harmed. Say the victor maintains an intention nonetheless of becoming the attacker's friend. Then the victor is acting on the strength of goodwill. And I find that kind of powerful, this idea of we're good, I'm really not letting you get off with this, but as soon as you calm down, I'd like to be your friend. That to me that's powerful. Like that feels emotional. So, and it kind of seems like what you were saying, Pete, of you're not against the person. Right. Yeah.
I've actually in a situation where I have to arrest someone and take them out of their home. And the wife's there and the kids are there. They're very angry. Once they realize that they're going to be in custody and they've, put their car keys away and do all the things necessary and put their hands out, then there's this friendship. Okay, is there anything I can do? Is there anything you need while he's gone, while we're processing? And it really is genuine friendship, because you build up a relationship with people, even if you're a parole officer. And that doesn't stop just because the person started using drugs again. But my behavior to them changes dramatically when they did that, but my feelings toward them didn't. And I think they can feel the difference between that and someone who's using that as an excuse for revenge or punishment or cruelty. A whole world of difference how that's perceived.
Yes, and I can even notice it in myself, just in minor mental things. If I'm not thinking about the person after the issue is over, all I'm thinking about is getting this person on this issue, and then there's just nothing in my mind about, what's their life going to be like afterwards. But I think, it's sort of here that that you're thinking this is a necessary step, but the goal, the thing that's in your mind is the person's welfare. So Chuck, it seems like the difference between revenge and love is what you're feeling, what your goals are, and how you feel about the person. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's incredibly powerful, right? Swedenborg talks about how one angel can give flight to many evil spirits, and I think that idea of when we are a loving presence, we can go into very difficult circumstances and feel very empowered. I was just reading about Sister Antonia Brenner, and she actually moved into a prison in Mexico. She passed away recently, and it was just this little clip, and she was talking about a prison riot, and she said, people ask me if I'm afraid of these riots and calming people down in this jail in Mexico, maximum security prison. She said, no, I just go in and I raise my arms, and they know that I love them, and they settle down. And I love that image of when we can come into something with love, it actually is more powerful. We tend to think of love as a weakness, that if I go into it with a loving spirit, whatever the confrontation might be, that somehow that's showing weakness. In the reality, it's a power that's immense.
Yeah, it makes me think of the very successful nonviolence movements
Right.
in India, and then the civil rights
Right.
with Gandhi and civil rights movement here in the U.S. And I know that Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about casting a vision of we're all going to be friends at the end.
Right.
People of all races. And then Gandhi, I don't know, I heard this quote attributed to him, the British must leave as friends. I couldn't quite figure out, did he really say that or not? But that idea,
Yeah.
that hey, there's a future here, and we're fighting the evil, we're not fighting the people. So, and let's get to our last segment here, and then we'll touch on it more. I entitled this one, The Fundamental of Goodwill, just based on the Swedenborg quote, and it's a little just an extra layer on the same thing. So let's take a look at the quote that it's from. Fundamentally speaking, because when you want to know what the fundamental of goodwill, maybe not, but fundamentally speaking, goodwill is wanting what is best for others. This desire resides in the inner self. When people of goodwill resist an enemy, punish a guilty person, or discipline evil people, clearly they do so through the medium of their outer selves. Therefore, after the situation comes to an end, they go back to the goodwill that is in their inner selves. As much and as usefully as they can, they then wish the others well and benefit those others in a spirit of goodwill. And so I really like that image in your mind the whole time. You're thinking about how eventually you can benefit this person. And
Right.
that as soon that come to your senses. As soon as you're free of whatever malady is making you act in a way that I have to be corrective. And he says, in the outer self, it can look like pretty harsh. I mean, sometimes you got to move forcefully, but that this is inside this. Okay, I'm not burning all these bridges because it's not always going to be possible. If I get messages sometimes, people are saying, "What about you try to love someone, but they are neglectful or somehow dysfunctional? You want to in the end be their friend. They may not always reciprocate, but just that's kind of held in there. So it sounds like this inner and outer self that I hear you talk about often, Peter, at play as well.
Well, wanting what's best for the other person from the interior person within me, that would be real love. Outside of that is the love of myself, and that love doesn't want what's best for them, it wants what's best for me. And I will find myself in conflict with them if they're in touch with their outside and they want what's best for them, I want what's best for me, and it's the same piece of cake or it's the same parking spot, then we're in conflict. But if I can get back in touch with what's best for them and let go of those concerns what's best for me, then I can start to resonate to the part in them that can be concerned with other people. And it may take years. I mean, you're not necessarily going to see that on the street when you're arresting somebody.
Yep.
And just to recognize that their ego doesn't care what you think's best for them, like sobriety. They think what's best for them is getting what they want. So there's going to be conflict. It isn't conflict free just because you can be in touch with what's best for the other person.
Yep. And best judgment, that you're going by what you think is right, and you're trying to do it. And I like how you mentioned everything from we want the same parking space to where I'm incarcerating you for your own good. That we go through these processes both with big issues and with little issues. It sort of sounds like, how do you love your enemies? You make little enemies in your mind all the time, and it can be just as important to fight those little act like a Gandhi in those little things as
Right.
in the big ones, right?
Right. I love the quote. The devil is in the details. Really.
Yeah.
Because it is this. The odds of me being an axe murderer tonight are pretty much nil.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. The odds, though, of me going home and having an argument with my wife over something silly, what Peter's talking about, where my ego wants its way, her ego wants her way, and nobody's asking the question, what's best or how can I serve? The odds of that are pretty much 100%.
Yeah, and it's about habits,
Yeah.
and about that if this is where you get to train in a relatively safe situation, and then when big things come up, then there's more preparedness.
I would also say that those it may appear to be small over a parking spot,
Right.
but there's road rage, which ends up with people shot
Yes.
over something like that. Swedenborg says that every evil goes down to the deepest hell, so it's like the tip of the iceberg. It may start with an irritation, but it's capable of becoming homicidal. Even if it's only within you, you feel this homicidal feeling towards someone who's done something contrary to your will, even if it's simple. You're not going to commit a homicide, but you can feel those feelings.
And you don't know it's late, you don't know it's recognized, but you do sometimes. Like there'll be a kids soccer match or something, and people will seriously hurt, like parents will seriously hurt each other because of something that went down. You do hear this spillover, and that's a great point that Swedenborg mentions, that all hell or all negativity is all sort of one thing. It's all connected in various ways, so that you think I'm just fighting this little thing, but it's like the ocean is behind it. So all right, well, we're going to wrap it up here, and then we'll get to some questions when we come back. We're going to take a video break. Okay, we're back. So, Chuck, what were you saying about the flip side to the all evil is connected?
Yeah, the flip side is this huge empowerment too, right? Because every time we shun one evil, we essentially shun them all. But every time we do one loving thing, one good thing, we essentially do all good things.
Yeah.
It works both ways. It's sort of like an hourglass going up or going down.
Yeah, good is from God, and God is this infinite, homogeneous something. So that you're participating in whatever it is. I forgot to say, or maybe I didn't forget because I don't necessarily have to say this, but you guys can write your questions in if you'd like. We want to hear your questions, comments, and we just want your voices in the discussion. So if you're watching on YouTube, just write those in right now, or on Facebook, we'll try to find those and we'll give our best shot at them over the next couple minutes. So let's take a look at our first one here. This is from Not Again 001 on YouTube. What would Swedenborg say about Ebola and ISIS? Is Ebola the product of divine love and wisdom? So I'd say it's very timely, and I can't put words in Swedenborg's mouth, but in general, he never says that everything is the product of divine love and wisdom, but it's not of functioning as divine love and wisdom. As in, evil things let you see what evil is. They're a very good picture of it, but this is not God. Here's another form of my divine love and wisdom, which is Ebola. This is Swedenborg is saying that everything we experience here, there's a correspondence between the spiritual and physical worlds. That the two worlds are so interdependent that you get causation from one world into the other, and that everything evil that we suffer here is a result of evil on some level in the spirit. Not the spirit necessarily people here who are doing that, but just as he's saying, hell is attacking. So this is just another kind of hell attack. So it's really the problem of evil. But those are my first thoughts on it. Chuck, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess first off, that's a great question, and with Ebola, I love the concept. When you look at these events, they're horrendous. And from a new church perspective, this isn't God's will in its biggest sense. This is a permission. This is something that the world is not perfect, and these things do happen. And I don't pretend to ever understand perfectly why. I do know this, though, and I love this phrase, watch for the helpers.
Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? You watch for the helpers. You watch and you see the good that people are doing. I think about these workers who are over there right now, these healthcare workers putting themselves in huge danger. And I can't fully understand the spiritual dynamics of Ebola and the tragedy around it. What I can understand is I can look at these people who are helping, and I can go, yep, there is God there. I can see God there.
Yeah, Pete, did you have thoughts?
Well, I think his love and his wisdom includes that. It's not outside of God's will. God is infinite. His will is infinite. His power is infinite. I think if you look at it from a personal point of view in time and space, from a very limited view, it looks horrendous. It looks like no God could possibly be involved in that, and it couldn't be within his will. I think when the Swedenborg uses the word permission, it doesn't mean he's permitting something that's not in his will. I think it just hurts to recognize this is necessary in order for the good process to take place. When I dropped my first kids off to elementary school, kindergarten, they were crying. They didn't want to leave home, and they thought it was why did I suddenly want them to leave the house? But I could see the good beyond that, and I could see it was necessary. So I know in 12-step recovery, Bill Wilson had a pretty tough first 35 years. But then that became very, very useful in something like 207 recovery programs. So I just trust that in the long term, like Divine Providence says, in the long term, looking back, you'll see the long-term results, which was good. Behold, very good. In the short term, no, even being born is very painful. Having your umbilical cord cut is very painful. It's a very bizarre thing to go through. But then when you have a baby all washed, clean, and living, you say, oh, yeah. So the pain of birth, Swedenborg talks about, that overs quickly like the watch in the night. So I just say I don't have the perspective, but I don't believe anything's out of his control and isn't in some way, in the long term, a manifestation of his love and wisdom, and I just choose to trust that.
Yeah, nothing is happening that won't someday good will grow out.
Or it wouldn't be happening.
Yeah. Okay, so those are our thoughts on that. Let's get to the next one. This is from KC. Is it okay to help someone you don't know with their physical needs, e.g. food, even when you don't know if they have the energy to do hurtful things now that they have a full stomach? Yeah, good. So we're sitting here talking about, yeah, man, you gotta, if somebody's bad, you don't help them. Who is bad, who's good? How do you know? Right. And this gets down to like, do I give money to this guy? Is he just going to use it to buy a truck? So it's a tough question, and I would, it obviously just comes down to personal. And I would say, if you don't have reasonable evidence that they are involved in harmful things, I guess err on the side of generosity. But that's just my personal one. Chuck, did you?
Yeah, Casey, I enjoyed that question because we were just down at a homeless shelter this past week, and it's you could smell a lot of beer and a lot of urine and a lot of pot, and here we are feeding these people, and what I got clear on is there's a difference between fix and help and serve. I'm not there to fix these people. I'm not even there to help these people. I'm actually here to serve these people, to really from the bottom up. And for me, part of my spiritual growth is letting go of all that judgment. Judgments will come up galore about these people. And the reality is those are the evils I need to shun. And when I can shun that, then I can serve them in a very meaningful way. I was mentioning to Peter, when I show up at this homeless shelter, a man comes up to me, just looks me right in the eye and goes, God is so good. Well, who's serving whom there? I'm learning so much more than what I was offering that day.
Oh, yeah, we're not always going to know.
No.
What to you do your best.
You do your best.
Pete, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, I used to work in the city, and I had that opportunity. All these, and basically I ended up just letting go of my judgment, letting go of my concern. Sometimes I'd give the person $20. Sometimes I'd walk right by it and say, "No, I can't help you." And I just trusted I didn't know. So I believe there is someone within me who does know or can do it. So intuitively, sometimes I give, sometimes I don't. The truth is I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So there's your final answer. We have no idea. All right. So if you guys are watching this in post, you can not live. I mean, you can still feel free to write down questions, and we'll try to get to them either next week or we'll catch up during the week. All right, our next one is from Evelyn. It's not about an enemy, but a person who lives in my house who's a Bible thumper, but loves to blame everyone else about her current predicament. It sometimes gets to me. How do I deal with this? Okay, so I appreciate the question, Evelyn, and I can't know what's going on there. I do know that Bible thumping whilst being mean or destructive to other people, that was one of the things that Swedenborg spent the most effort on trying to fight against, because there's this, what he would call faith alone. Like, I have these set of principles that I claim are higher truths that I'm living by, but yet I'm just not acting kindly to the people around me. And that causes so much damage because the person who's in it already thinks they've got religion. They're not looking for, okay, wow, I got to examine myself, because you sort of think I'm already examined. And all of us go through periods of that. Like I'm here doing all the Swedenborg cartoons or whatever about, like, okay, Swedenborg says this, but that it can always be a front to kind of hide negative things, because you think, oh yeah, I know what's up, but it ain't about what you know, it's about how you act. So as far as what to do, I'm going to leave that to these guys. So Pete, did you have something?
Well, I'm involved in 12-step recovery, and they call it doing the steps. And when you get disturbed, you get angry, or you get irritated from someone else's behavior, the first thing you have to do is get your character defects out of the way. Get your reaction out of the way, your anger out of the way, your resentment, because they don't come from intelligence, they don't come from God's wisdom. So you try and get rid of them, and then you ask God's presence. And you ask to look at this person, what they're doing, like we had talked from the beginning, from a deeper internal love. And that love has wisdom. And it may ask them to leave the house, and it may just allow them to talk. I don't know, because I'm turning it over to, in the 12 steps, a power greater than myself and a lot smarter than me. I know my initial reaction to negativity generally has never worked for them or for me.
Tested in the lab.
So I have to, yes, I have to get to a higher level, and that's going to be something within me, not my natural reaction. It takes Gurdjieff, for someone I study, so if it takes no effort, no control, it's a natural reaction. You're going to get a natural result, which means they're just going to get angrier if you try and correct them. So I have to get in touch with something within me that knows what to do. I don't.
Love has wisdom, and it's because there's so many complex, specific situations like the one in this question. You couldn't write a handbook on all of them, but this process of initially, okay, how do I get as much to love as I can, recognize what's sort of ego-based in me, and that's the best starting point, for action. So Chuck, did you have anything?
Yeah, I really enjoyed what Peter said. I think it's spot on, and again, a difficult question, and for me, part of the things that helps me to get out of my ego and out of my reactions is when I can finally really listen to the person, when I can finally go, what's going on? I'd love to hear from you. Like, what would that whole "let it begin with me"? Like, well, tell me what's going on for you. Tell me what is this about for you. Tell me the way a perfect life would look for you. Tell me why you feel this way. I want to understand more without trying to rush in with my agenda. Because my agenda is only concerned with being right, and two people trying to be right is not going to work, especially with the Bible thumper.
Yeah, if I have a situation that I'm going into where I have a conflict with a person, I have to gain intelligence. So, am I the problem, or they, or is it both? And in what ways are we each the problem? Yeah. Is this a so what areas in me are causing problems? Then with this, is this the kind of person who just needs to be heard? Is this the kind of person who is too locked? We all can be such different animals in a different time. So yeah, and so that's a lot. But hopefully in some of those, so I don't have a final point, but hopefully in some of those that was useful. Let's get to our very last one for the night, which is Animus Tellum. Is love an inherently Christian trait, or can people of other faiths or none express heartfelt love for others? Yeah, as we were talking about Swedenborg's book, Divine Love and Wisdom, and it begins, love is our life, right? So, if you're alive, you can express heartfelt love.
And God is love itself, and God is life itself, and it's infinite. I study other religions. I just like to do that. And every religion I've ever studied says the same thing. Maybe it's worded differently, but they talk about this kind of love, agape love, unconditional love. So no, it's not limited to a Christian idea at all.
Yeah. And I one of my favorite stories I tell about a parishioner right along Peter's line. Like it isn't limited, and God is so gracious and so loving. Like it's an amazingly heartwarming thing to observe. And this lady had been born and raised as an atheist up until her 50s, until she became part of our congregation. And I remember her talking about her testimony, and she said, my atheism was a gift from God. Because when God arrived, he had a total blank canvas to work with. And I love that idea. It made me actually jealous, like, boy, maybe I should have been an atheist for a while.
All this baggage.
all that baggage, and like God knew what he was doing the whole time. And just that bit of where we can, right, Pete, where we can just like take a step back and trust God is God, love has its own wisdom. God is God, love has its own wisdom.
Yeah, the love has its own wisdom, and the love is a fundamental of life. It's occurring everywhere, regardless of external labels of people, Christian, atheist, whatever else. These are relatively superficial things almost. And so that deep down, it's more about the little interactions that we're having with each other. The guy took my parking space. How do I react? That in there's the opportunity for love, no matter what. All right, so everybody, thank you so much for those questions, and I look forward to seeing what else you ask during the week. We're going to come back and do a little meditation, but first we'll give you guys a small video break. So here it is. Okay, so now we're going to get into the final segment of the show, which is hopefully a little less cognitive and more kind of experiential. It's called Correspondences, and this is based on Swedenborg's, or not Swedenborg's concept, but a concept he describes where he says that spiritual realities or inner realities, sort of concepts, are you can see the image of them in physical objects, that the world around us is kind of a canvas by which we can learn about the deeper things of the spirit, if that makes sense. And so what we're going to do today is try it out when we're looking at the moon, which Stuart, who's running the cameras, told me that there's a lunar eclipse coming up, so this may be especially potent. And Swedenborg talks about the moon as a representation of sort of, he phrases it as faith, but also this is kind of your belief in something higher or your guiding light when things aren't going as well. Because you think about the sun is bright and warm, and when it's out, you can see everything and you feel warm and it's great. The moon is when the sun is not really visible, and this is, you're just seeing the light of the sun reflected off something. So this is when things seem more obscure, like it's hard to keep your best hopes alive. But the moon is the thing that reminds you, hey, the light is there. And it'll come back. So the moon is kind of this beacon of hope there. So any of those thoughts, just put them in your mind and be looking at this, and we'll see how it feels. So here it goes. And so that last one, we're standing on the moon, looking at the earth. Who knows what that means? You're coming from a place of something. Hopefully you figured it out. Thank you guys for watching this show. If you want to help this show reach other people, you can make a small donation to the Swedenborg Foundation. It's a non-profit. This show is run off donations, and donations help it spread, and maybe someone else will find it who's interested. So there's a link in the description of this video. If you click that and just make a small donation, helps a lot. Thank you. Speaking of thank yous, thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Peter. I really enjoyed this conversation. Could have gone on longer, and I would have been fine with it. There's a lot of great material. Always appreciate you guys being on this show, and hope to have you back soon.
Thanks
Great.
for having us.
Thank
All
you.
right, and I hope you guys will come back and watch. Next week, we will be here.